All right, we are back for the Wednesday edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines, and my name is Pat Burnham. I am joined by Osceola managing editor Bob Ferrante and Osceola recruiting analyst and resident recruiting guru Charles Fishbein. All right, guys. Well, it's never a dull moment anymore with the recruiting calendar and NCAA portal calendar go. So we'll start with some breaking news, I guess. Yesterday, Josh Farmer, defensive tackle for Florida State, announced that he was going to enter the transfer portal. I have heard two things today, that he's not officially in the portal, and I've heard another thing that he is officially in the portal. And I am hooked up to all the portal notifications on Twitter, 3 different ones, and none of them have reported that Josh is in the portal, guys. But there's been some very cryptic tweets coming out of Florida State today, including Fabian Lovett, who just tweeted out that all we got is all we need. And then we got another tweet from offensive coordinator Alex Atkins talking about adversity. And that would seem to be the only kind of adversity you could have on a Wednesday at 12:32 p.m. In the middle of April. So, all right. So we don't know whether Josh Farmer is going into the portal, guys, but it certainly looks like that's where it's headed. If you go to his Cola Boy _J5 Twitter account, the top 2 tweets pinned to his Twitter account are Georgia football account tweets. The guy has decided to make this a very public thing. We assume the public part of it's coming from him. Just your thoughts. Let's start with, do you think it's going to happen? Because it sounds, all the little tea leaves and all the little things you're reading, and his decision to make that announcement yesterday and make this negotiation for more playing time, a starting spot, or what it's more likely about, NIL money. Let's be honest. I mean, this is something we're going to have to talk about. We have reached free agency. But, guys, do you anticipate Josh Farmer, as of 12:33 on Wednesday, April 26th, being on Florida State's roster on May 1st?
Yeah, I think at this point, Pat, I don't. I think unfortunately, with the transfer portal, it's sort of like the SEC's motto. It just means more is maybe the transfer portal reality of where we are in 2023. I think for Josh, this is really unfortunate because short term, you look at it, this might be an opportunity to get some more NIL money from another school out there. Long term, are you going to find a better fit than Florida State? I mean, let's be honest. Odell Haggins is your position coach. He's developed dozens of guys for the NFL. You're near family and friends in the Panhandle. You've got Daryl Jackson, one of your good friends on the team. Corey Fuller is one of the analysts for the Seminoles. This does feel like a good fit for Florida State, but it also appears, everything that we're seeing, that he's not going to be on the roster. That's frustrating. I think that's also the reality of where we are in college football, though, too, that we're going to see these kind of moves just because the grass does appear to be greener elsewhere.
And by greener, you do mean greener. So, all right, Fish. Well, you expect Josh Farmer to be on this roster come a month from now, a week from now? How do you read the tea leaves and all that good stuff?
I think this is what happens. It's part of the bad problem with the portal, and I know I've been steadfast in this. I've said over and over from the beginning with the whole portal that eventually it's going to bite you in the butt. You can sit there and you can take these kids from other schools, and everybody cheers when one kid comes from another school, but God forbid one of these kids on Florida State's roster decides, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. And this is what happens when you recruit kids, all right, and you're saying you're going to recruit a kid from high school. Joshua Farmer wasn't a finished product coming out of high school. He wasn't a big-time player. They've developed him. And then you bring in 2 or 3 kids from other schools and say, you know what, these guys are here to take your job. You're going to have some internal issues. I don't care how good the character of your program is or the whatever catchphrases you want to use when you're talking about Florida State football. This is going to be a problem at any school. I talked to a coach just the other day. he had a kid that came in and said, "Hey, coach, this school's giving me $25,000." And he told me, "Fish, this kid's not even on our 2 deep." He's like, I said, "Good luck." I think this is just a problem you're going to have in college football. You're going to bring kids in, and those kids are going to be happy, and the ones that aren't going to be happy they're going to go somewhere else. And this is where it's going to be interesting how these schools start to manage their rosters, because you still need 85 guys. And if you go into a season where you lost 10 guys, all of a sudden you're down to 75, you get some injuries, you could have a rough season when you thought you were going to do well during that season.
Yeah, and listen, here's the other part of this. We had some debate yesterday about where this information was coming from that was leaked out. Was it coming externally from Josh Farmer and maybe somebody that was on his side of things, or was it coming from Florida State? I'm not sure that it matters at the end of the day, but what it does is it puts the program and Josh on blast. And I think if he's not sure if he wants to go, he probably should have done this behind the scenes, because let me. So maybe instead of expounding on this, I'll ask you guys a question. Let's assume that Josh, he made it official or made it public yesterday when he says, "I plan to enter the portal." Does he back Mike Norvell into a corner on this thing, because now he is publicly negotiating? Let's be honest, it's more likely about NIL than it is anything else. Does he back Mike Norvell into a corner, and does Mike have to say, "You know what, there was another way to handle this. I can't go through this with you," and set the precedent that we are open for negotiation anytime someone enters the portal? What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you can't have renegotiations, especially after the spring. I mean, let's be honest. Josh Farmer had a fantastic spring.
Yep.
Pat, we were constantly saying Daryl Jackson, Josh Farmer, both these guys are looking really, really good. So, and if we had done those stars of the spring stories, like right after, say, the last practice, the 15th practice, we probably would have all had Josh Farmer up there. So, but that's not a point where you can go to an NIL collective and renegotiate what you've already set in place. That's not how this works to me. And I don't think that's where I don't think coaches and NIL collectives should be put in that bad spot. Again, this is kind of weird. If this is truly, again, about money, so be it. If it's about the opportunity to start, I don't get that either, because D end and D tackle, you rotate so many guys. John Papucha says he wants 5 guys at D end. Odell, we know he wants 4, maybe even a 5th or a 6th to throw in there too. This can't be about just truly starting. I hope it's not. But again, this is I feel like Florida State is the best spot for Josh Farmer to develop. But I also see he's looking for a greener opportunity too.
I mean,
yeah,
Bob,
listen. Go ahead.
Can I jump in real quick? You
Yeah.
got 2 things. One, Braden Fisk and Daryl Jackson. You bring these kids in. Kids have egos. You're talking about 18-year-old kids, and you brought these other kids in, and now you don't feel as important. You go out and you bust your butt during spring. You're saying he had this great spring. What do you think he's going to do? This is it. When we opened up Pandora's box and said, "Hey, we're going to pay players," and this guy just had a great spring, he's going to monetize it. This is part of what you got to deal with. And FSU's benefited to this point in the portal. So now you can't come back now and be upset because one of the kids that everybody's praising is, "Oh, he had a great spring." Ask any coach. Every coach that calls me about about recruiting service and what they're looking for, D tackle is probably at the top of the list.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And Pat will tell you, they are the unicorns. Pass rush ends and elite D tackles. This kid has value. Teams are all University of Miami literally is one hit away from playing a 6-foot, 260-pound D tackle if one of their starters go out. There's just such a value for these kids, and there's not many of them. Like when coaches call me and they're like, "Hey, do you have a D tackle?" It's not like they're asking for a wide receiver. There's 800 of those that are come out of the state of Florida. D tackles are they're such an important position. So this kid has major value. He's coming off a great spring. I'd have to go back and look how he played in the spring game. But if he has footage out there, come on, this kid, he has a reason to go and ask for more money if he's done that well.
Well, listen, I maybe he has the right to ask for more money from somebody else. I'm not. Listen, I think his agreement was reached this offseason, right, Bob? With whatever the battle's in. Certainly, you can't, just because you had a strong spring, you can't go ask for. You can't, because what's going to happen in next January if he decides to come back? Or, he's only going to ask for his playing time is going to go up because Daryl Jackson leaves. So
you got to deal with it.
And listen, and I don't think anybody's upset about it. I think we all are starting to accept the fact that it's the reality. Now, whether it's the smartest thing for Josh Farmer to do is another thing altogether. Listen, I went through the entire defensive line, defensive end transfer portal list on 2 different services today. Derek McClendon has been in the portal since the middle of spring. He still has not found a home.
But he's a defensive end can't rush the passer at an elite level. Those guys aren't as much of a priority. Listen, University of Miami just went through this. Van Dyke just went basically with his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, basically put Miami's feet to the fire to get more money out of him because Alabama needs a quarterback. This isn't just to Florida State. This is something that I personally believe, and this is a totally different subject. Eventually, they're going to have to put guardrails on this thing. And there's once you take a contract or you take an offer, that's your offer. You can't come back or renegotiate. It's just they're going to have to do this, or you can't control 85 kids. And this is where I thought one of the programs at one time ended up giving so much money to each kid that's in the program, and it was equal across the board, because you're going to have this at every school. A kid has a good spring, or you're going to have kids that have good fall practices now, and they're going to monetize this because there's no rules. It's just basically the wild, wild west. You can do whatever you want.
And listen to what you just said about 2 minutes ago. I think you said Drew Rosenhaus.
Yes.
Is representing Alex, whatever his name is, down there in Miami.
Van Dyke.
We are now having one of the top agents in all of pro sports start to intertwine into college sports. It has changed so much within the last 2 years. We wouldn't have had this conversation 2 years ago.
Because agents are not allowed to represent the player, but they are allowed to. What these agents have done now, because I've spoken to a couple of them, they are going out and finding NIL deals for these players.
Yeah.
And this is a way for them to get in the door with that kid and eventually represent them. They can't represent them. They can't.
They're consulting, for lack of a better word.
Consulting. They create these websites. They improve their social media accounts. It's all a scam, but it's just the reality of where we're at now. And you are going to have these agents that are going to sit there and say, hey, I could get you this amount of money. Let me go back to Florida State. Hey, listen, I'm not really representing this kid, but he ain't going to play this year unless you give him another $50,000. Yeah. And by the way, I have 10 other schools calling me and saying they'll take. This is what you're dealing with now.
Yeah, players aren't being represented, and colleges aren't tampering. The two biggest lies surrounding the portal. We had this debate yesterday as well. Yeah. Listen, most of these guys are getting committed so quickly after they announce. It's crazy. I was going through the list of linebackers because that's something I want to talk to you guys about. I went through some defensive tackles, but let's assume that Farmer does leave. I don't think they're going to replace him. I don't think they need to replace him. It's a loss for sure. Florida State is not as good inside without Josh Farmer, so I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying. But certainly with Braden Fisk and Dennis Briggs and Fabian Lovett, and who we think is a really good raw talent, Iowa Bami Tafasi and some others, I don't think that it's as big. Listen, I'll put it to you this way. And I'm glad I don't have a huge social media following because I'll get blown up for this. I think losing Josh Farmer in the totality of the scheme of things for Florida State in 2023 is less of a loss than losing your 2 backup linebackers in Steven Dix and Brendan Gant. Do you agree with that?
Because I do, because you know what? They have so many guys that are versatile enough. Dennis Briggs, Brendan Fisk, they have enough guys. They are 3 deep at D tackle. They can move guys in there, and I believe Bishop Thomas moved outside to end at some point of spring practice. I don't know. Was it?
And this would be a great time to say, hey, Bishop, take one for the team. You're moving back inside.
Yeah.
Because
I'm
not sure he's one of the top 5 ends.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they've got a bunch of guys that they can lean on in this situation. They have done a very good job of stockpiling talent and depth inside and then bringing in the transfers. They've put them in, having Jackson and having Fisk. Those 2 guys give them a lot of options because they can play them anywhere on the D line. They don't have to just play them on, and they could also go to some 3-man fronts and they have enough guys that are versatile enough to come off the edge and rush the passer. So I don't think he's a major loss, other than you like to have that depth. It's a long season. You know how it is. Guys on the O-line and D-line get beat up, and this guy was just starting to produce. But other than that, it's not going to. They're not going to go from a 10-win, 11-win team right now to 6, 7 wins because they lost Joshua Farmer.
All right, yeah. So all right, yeah. And let's be clear, if you're just joining us, we are hearing different things, that he is officially in the portal. I've heard that he's not, but we have heard from Josh Farmer that he intends to enter the portal. So, and we are reading some cryptic tweets from within the program, and the fact that Josh Farmer, his 2 pinned tweets on his social media account are both Georgia football account tweets, including a national championship ring, and then one that's talking about the big defensive lineman that's going to be drafted would have been probably a top 5 pick before being caught alive. But long story short, so it looks like it's trending that way. We do have a listener, William McMillan. He thinks that this may cost ACC, Florida State, a chance at playing for the ACC championship, and says they are an 8-3 type team now, as opposed to a 10-2, 11-1, 12-0 type team. Do you guys agree with that?
I didn't realize this kid was Corey Simon, so I don't think it makes any impact. Honestly, it's not. It's a loss, and like I said, you'd hate to lose a guy, especially on the D line. But this isn't changing any of their goals.
Hey, go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was going to say, I think the wild card still is Darrell Jackson's waiver. You cannot lose a Josh Farmer and a Darrell Jackson and still think that you have enough depth to withstand an injury. Again, what Florida State was hit with middle of last season, that stretch, the Wake Forest, NC State, Clemson, was when they had those injuries on the defensive interior, that hurt them. So the big story we're all going to be watching now is Darrell Jackson. When does he get the waiver? When does he find out?
Yeah. Well, we talked about this before, Bob. You have to think. Listen, I used to work in football operations, and one of my things at South Florida was dealing with compliance, and we always felt like we had a pretty good idea of whether we were going to get a waiver through the NCAA approved or not. We put a lot through there at that time. In fact, one day, I'm not going to get off on that. That's another story for another time. But anyway, so that you think they had to feel pretty good about that coming in, right? So you would now, yes, it becomes a bigger issue if Darrell Jackson is not going to be eligible. But I think they feel pretty good about that. But you're right, Josh Farmer would take on loss if he leaves. Would take on a different look if Darrell Jackson could not play. Of course, we still have not seen Braden Fisk. He did not go through spring, or very limited, more rehab than anything else during spring, running, working on agility drills, that type of thing. So anyway, it's going to be interesting. And you know what? We are sitting here on April 26th, so we still have to make it through 4 more full days of portal news. Fish, I guess I'll ask all of you. Would you anticipate anyone else from Florida State entering the portal between now and Sunday night?
I think it's possible. I don't, you guys would know more than me because you guys watch somebody like Travis Jay. It just doesn't seem he seems like one of those players that has gotten lost in the mix at Florida State, and you don't hear much about him. Like I said, you guys would know more about that. You got to wonder if there's guys on the O-line, because they have so many guys, younger guys that are on the roster that aren't going to get to play this year. like Woody, do they lose some guys? I'm sure one more guy at least will end up in the portal, is my guess, from Florida State, just because some kids probably having somebody that's talking in their ear. That's the problem, is now you still have these guys that, advise these kids, which they give them horrible advice, half of them. Somebody sitting there saying, hey, listen, I got a coach has called me. You could go start at this other school. Somebody's telling these kids lies. And that's just what you have to deal with now with this whole thing. And, there's going to be opportunities for other kids at other schools. So,
yeah, well, listen, we've already seen a couple offensive linemen, Herring, among others, that have gone in to the portal. And I think you're right. It's probably not done yet. If Farmer does leave, and I'm not going to future cast it or whatever they call it. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let the tweets and both from him and his teammates or current teammates speak for themselves, and what we're hearing speak for itself. If Josh Farmer was to leave, and listen, as I said, I think he's forced Mike into an awful situation, making it public. I think he's almost got to tell him, hey, good luck to you. We wish you well. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not privy to the conversations those two are having, but I think it sets a dangerous precedent if a kid can go on there and threaten into the portal and then come back with a raise. That's the trickle down, the ripple effects from that will last forever. Listen, the ripple effects from the portal are going to be felt from here to eternity at this point. All right, so FSU's at 82 scholarships, and we feel pretty good about where they are at defensive tackle, regardless of what happens with Josh Farmer. But Fish, you and I had talked about this earlier. We were concerned, you were not with us last week when we talked about the departures of Brendan Gant and Steven Dix. Now, I've gone through every possible linebacker that's in the portal, and there's just not guys that I'm like, oh, Florida State's got to go after him. But you're down to 3 linebackers with starting experience or much experience at all. Tatum Bethune, Kalen DeLoach, DJ Lundy. You got a redshirt freshman, Omar Graham, and the other 3 linebackers, 2 of which are not even on campus, are true freshmen. So what are your thoughts on Florida State going to the portal? I'll give you a couple of names, Fish. You got Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste from UCF, currently committed to Ole Miss. Antonio Greer from USF, committed to Arkansas. Monty Montgomery from Louisville, committed to Ole Miss. David Reese from Florida, committed to Cal. There's a kid that you may be familiar with, Amari McCray from FSU, that went to Miami Northwestern. He is in the portal. Terrence Lewis, who was recruited by Florida State, signed with Maryland, went to UCF. He is not, I don't think they're going to take him because I'm pretty sure he's got to sit out a year. So it does. He's probably
Terrence has character issues too. I just don't. He's one of those kids. You can't sell me on culture and everything, and then you bring him in. I just don't see that happening. I just think FSU is going to play a lot of 2 linebacker sets and go with extra DBs, and that's just the scheme they're going to run. So they probably only need 5 or 6 guys on the roster. The one thing about linebackers, and this, a lot of them play special teams too. So if some guys get hurt, you're going to be dangerously thin, or playing young players. You're going to have to rely on the linebacker that came in spring from Georgia and the kid out from California. Those 2 kids are going to get to play a lot this year because of special teams. So it's just the way the position's gone. There's just not a whole lot. If there is a good linebacker in the portal, you're going to see teams jump on it. I mean, Texas A&M just took a kid from Jacksonville State, a 1AA program. So it tells you how thin the linebacker spot is in the portal. So it's, they probably just feel like they have better options on the roster right now than some of these guys. I like David Reese. You said he's committed to Cal. I think he would be a good upgrade or a good player to have on their roster. I think he's someone that could be productive at Florida State, but
yeah, and how, that's the other thing I thought about. You see these guys that are committed, meaning they're not enrolled yet. They did not report for the spring semester at their new school. I wonder if the NIL makes these commitments any firmer than they would be if they were before the NIL era. So that's one of my concerns about trying to get in your foot in the door. But, listen, there were some rumblings about Jean Baptiste from UCF before the season even ended that he was a potential guy that Florida State might have some interest in. Then obviously there's a connection there. He was recruited by Randy Shannon, and there was some talk on chat rooms and internets about Antonio Greer from USF being a guy that might be interested in coming to FSU. I don't know if that love was reciprocated on the other end. Obviously not. He's committed to Arkansas. But anyway, Bob and Jerry, Fish thinks they're going to stand pat at linebacker. Is that the right decision, given the potential of what this team has a chance to do?
I yield the floor to Jerry as our resident linebacker expert / publisher.
Thanks, Bob. I think we're having the same discussion we had last year about quarterback. We all thought that Florida State should go into the portal and grab another quarterback because they were dangerously thin. No experience other than Rodemaker. What little he had, and Mike decided not to. And I think we all questioned that. We thought, boy, if Travis goes down, we're in bad trouble. And, he went down in Louisville and Rodemaker stepped in and filled the void. But we got lucky at that position last year and made it through. I feel like we may be in that same situation right now. I think most all of us feel like it wouldn't hurt to grab another linebacker.
Or two.
Yeah. If there's one out there who's better than what you got.
Well, yeah, we did talk about that, Fish. Don't put a round peg in a square hole if he's not, But listen, I do think it puts them at a decided advantage if one of those three front line guys were to go down. I mean, I just hate. You see all these. You see Arizona State signing 3 transfer linebackers, committed. Some of them may be enrolled, but anyway, you see other people signing linebackers that they obviously feel pretty good. I would feel better. And listen, let's if you pissed off Kalen DeLoach or Tatum Bethune or DJ Lundy, that's totally different than pissing off Jordan Travis last fall, because Jordan Travis was your best football player on that side of the ball, and it wasn't even close. None of those linebackers are the best player on defense, and it's not even close. So I would be less worried about offending one of those 3 guys than I would Jordan Travis. And we know that the fact that Jordan Travis could have transferred out was probably one of the reasons they did not take a quarterback.
Right. And let me just say, too, that, if you're a linebacker that's entered the portal right now, you probably are looking for a team where you're going to get the chance to play right away.
Well,
and you're coming into Florida State where there's 3 established starters. It just might be harder to find the right fit than it would appear at a position where there ought to be dozens of prospects out there.
Well, you know how they have when Batman has the little bat light that goes around the city with the little silhouette of the bat? Yeah. Florida State needs to put one of those up with the silhouette of Marvin Jones going around the sky, because I do think they need a linebacker. I hope they get one, at least one to help fortify depth, if not come in and maybe make the team better. But anyway, so Bob, any final thoughts on linebackers?
No, I'm with you guys. You don't just take a guy just for the sake of doing so. Scholarships are very valuable. I would say in the end, does Mike Norvell look at his walk-ons and maybe reward a walk-on with a scholarship, not necessarily at linebacker, but just because it's good for your culture, for a guy to be rewarded for that? We'll see. I mean, these next couple of days are going to be pretty telling as far as what linebackers are out there, who are they interested in. We'll see. I don't like where Florida State is just purely from a numbers standpoint. But again, this is the reality of the transfer portal. It's going to thin you at certain spots. And I was telling somebody else the other day, what college football team, maybe besides Georgia, feels good about every single position on their football field. I mean, everybody's going to have a flaw. Clemson's going to have multiple flaws. This is sort of just where we are in college football.
Yeah, and I assure you that Florida State's coaching staff probably has more concerns than we do. That's generally the nature of the coaching business. Is they do have a tendency to be a little bit more critical than we have, a more critical eye than we do. All right, Fish. So we've heard a lot about safety. Should Florida State go out and get a safety? A couple of guys that stood out to me that Florida State would have some awareness of: Donovan McMillan from Florida, currently committed to Pitt; Kamari Rogers, Miami, committed to Mississippi State; Jason Matry from BC, committed to Wisconsin. All guys Florida State has played against or has known about. Do you think Florida State should go out and get a safety?
Well, it's definitely a position they can improve. You look at these guys, a lot of this comes down to relationship, that they have any prior relationships. I remember Kamari was recruited a little bit by FSU. He's from Mississippi, I believe. But that's why I think it'll be tough to pull that kid. He's a Mississippi kid, and you have him committed to Mississippi State. So I don't see where FSU would get in the ball game with that kid. It's hard.
Yep, and this is just going out and picking out some of the bigger names in the portal. Listen, they didn't always go after bigger names from major colleges last year with Jared Verse and Braid,
local kids.
Yeah. So these were more just kids that kind of made sense because of where they played.
I definitely think adding a piece in the secondary, they can continue to improve that area. It's been a position of, without Robinson coming back, you wonder who's going to step up in that safety spot. So they could always improve that position.
Yeah, we've also talked maybe about bringing another edge defender. Does anybody stand out to you that you've seen enter the portal? Jabari Ismail from Miami, Clayton Smith from OU, Saval Smalls from Washington was a starter for Washington. It was very good defense last year. Donnell Harris from Texas A&M is in the portal. Any of those guys stand out to you?
Well, the thing I could tell you about Jamari Ismail, his father works at UM, and he's in the portal. So I don't know how positive a sign. He was a project coming out of high school, probably someone that while you were at USF, you guys would have taken because he was 6'5", long, athletic. He's a project. I think he's going to basically just be a depth guy at Florida State if he comes in and plays at Florida State. I don't think any of these guys that you're mentioning are much of an upgrade for what they already have. Florida State's in a good spot at the defensive end position, and really all they're going to be doing is bringing in a depth guy. And I doubt any of those guys are going to do much better than what they already have.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, listen, we got 5 days, 4.5 days to find out whether anybody else will end up in the portal from Florida State. We are starting to see guys announce that they're taking official visits to such and such schools. I believe Brendan Gant, who was just entered the portal from Florida State, just committed to UCF. Could be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. So we'll start seeing more news on the portal as the window closes, and these guys have to start making decisions on official visits before really summer school starts. Fish, the coaches are out on the road. Spring recruiting has started in earnest. We've seen Chris Thompson in Texas, and he has offered 2024 JUCO offensive tackle Sean Marcus Adams from Navarro, Texas Junior College. Did you have a chance to watch him on film? He is setting up an official visit.
No, I'll have to go back and check him out. I didn't get a chance to watch him.
So. He's a very physical kid. He's about 6'4". I listed him as 300. I think after watching his film again, that's probably a little light. But he has really good feet. Very physical kid. Plays with a lot of energy. He's very demonstrative, I guess is the best word. But we talked to him yesterday or 2 days ago, and he said that he was very excited to get the Florida State offer and that he is planning an official visit for this summer. They have not worked out the official visit date yet, but they are planning on bringing in Sean Marcus for an official visit, which gets us to offensive line. That's another offensive lineman, kind of a piece of the puzzle for the 2024 class. What are you hearing about Jonathan Daniels and Jason Zondamela? And then, of course, Manasi Atiti has announced that Florida State is in the top 3. He's a big old kid from I know you talked about him in one of your board posts, but just give us an update on what you're thinking on some of these guys that Florida State's been in on for a while now.
Yeah, I think Zanamella is just a matter of time. It's not – I think he's going to be in the class. The Daniels kid, like I said, I think, he's a tackle. I said this before. He went to Under Armour Combine and measured in, I think, at 6'2", a little over 6'2 and a half. Is he an inside guy? Can he play outside? There have been guys like Isaiah Wynn, who went to Georgia from Lakewood High School, that were 6'2", 6'3", that played tackle, but they were very long. Daniels supposedly has that same type of length. But I think he's one of those kids, the longer he waits, somebody else could take his spot. Somebody like the kid from California or other tackles that are bigger. Florida State wants traditional tackles. They got one last year with the Simmons kid. They want guys that are bigger, longer, athletic guys. It will be interesting to see what happens to Daniels. I think he has to make a decision sooner rather than later. I don't think he's a guy that they're going to just wait till National Signing Day to decide. But I think they're in a good spot. They're in a position of strength now. They're recruiting these guys. They could take them at any time if they wanted to. And now they could have these guys on the hook. And if somebody better, like the kid in California, comes along that wants to come to their school, they'll take them. The only thing with the kid from California, and I know he's from Africa, so he's not really a California kid. The further you get away from the state of Florida, I just think that there's so many schools involved that it's harder to land those kids. And I know there's reports out there that Florida State leads. I'll believe it once that kid signs on the dotted line that he's coming to Florida State. I'm just of the belief that as you get further away from this state, it becomes that much harder. And as kids leave and they get away from their visit, the longer they go without committing, they forget about what really happened and they start to look at these other options. We'll see. I know FSU has a great shot at the kid, but I think someone like that really has to pull the trigger sooner rather than later because of the distance and the fact that, the longer they're from their visit, it becomes harder to land those type of kids.
Yeah, and he does have currently his top 3 are Florida State, Miami, and Utah. So Utah would be, based on your assumption that distance is going to play a factor, would be the most likely choice out of those 3 because Miami's even further away, although it's probably easier to get to because you can probably get a direct flight from LA to Miami, which you're not going to get out of Tallahassee or into Tallahassee. So, all right. So we're starting to hear more and more buzz about Charles Lester. He has continued saying that Florida State is the leader. He said that on his most recent visit that we spoke to him on. I'm not sure if he was back for the spring game. I was not here for the spring game. But what are you hearing about Charles Lester, a kid I know you like a lot?
Yeah, I really think he's in the class unless something crazy happens. His recruitment reminds me a lot of LaMarcus Joyner. LaMarcus was a kid that loved Florida State. There's just some of these kids that you end up getting lucky with where they love the school. They grew up a fan of that school, just like LaMarcus. I remember so many people around LaMarcus were trying to push him to Ohio State. And I was told when he was on the van to going to all these schools and they were heading to Ohio State, he basically said, if you guys don't go to Florida State, I'm going to get out of the bus right now and go back home. That's how much that kid liked Florida State and people were trying to push him to other schools. I think
Fish, you froze up on us for a second. You still there?
He looks frozen.
He is frozen.
that's
All
just
right.
the same thing. You hear me?
Yeah, we got you. You
All
froze
right.
up on us for about 15 seconds.
It's all right, man. It happens. But I was just saying, I just think Lester's one of those kids that really likes Florida State, and it's going to be hard for them to beat. If he's not committed already, it will be soon.
All right, we're going to get a stock up, stock down report this week.
I could put a stock up, stock down report. I
always like that. All right, so we are in the middle of football recruiting season. High school football teams are on the practice field, particularly in Florida. I'm going to probably go out and watch 2 Florida High kids, Micah Danzy and Ashton Hampton either Friday or Monday. They go in full pads on Monday. So we're going to have some film clips from that practice session whenever we go for our Osceola subscribers. But, Fish, are you getting out anywhere this way? I know that typically spring football starts a little bit later down south than it does up here in North Florida. But have school started down there? And
they start May 1st. I'm going to get out there on the road next week. I already sent you guys a story on one of the schools. Even if we don't hit the actual school, we've seen enough footage of a lot of these guys, so we will do profiles of actual individual schools so the fans can see what schools have what, and we're going to provide a lot of information over the next 3-4 weeks during spring football.
All right. Well, listen, we will definitely, between Fish and myself, we are definitely planning to hit some high school practices, not only here in Tallahassee, but Fish will be down in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, West Palm Beach, all those good spots, and then I'll be doing the country work up here in Jacksonville and Tallahassee, Bluntstown. I get the exciting cities, Albany, Georgia, Moultrie, Georgia. Fish, you get all the good spots. I got to go to work. But anyway, it's going to be a fun spring. Fish and I really love going out to these practices, checking these kids out. We are planning to get over to Jacksonville to check out Derek Plaz, who's got an FSU offer. We also check out Tramel Jones at Mandarin, and he's got a couple of really good teammates. So we're going to get out and about next week, and we'll start having video clips of some of these prospects and commits to the 2024 class. All right, so Fish, you and I kind of like to talk a little bit of football, and of course, I think everybody in the country is fascinated by what Deion Sanders will do or not do at the University of Colorado, but there's various reports that he only has 16 guys on scholarship. I don't know if that's true or not. And he signed 19. So if you do that math, that's about 35 guys on scholarships. So he's got 50-some scholarships to fill. He better have a big NIL bucket to fill that roster because every kid that signs with him is going to ask for something. Just your thoughts on do you think that's going exactly the way he thought it would?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he went in there and basically said he's going to blow that thing up. And I think they brought in 30 transfers, 30 high school kids. So you're talking 60 kids that are brand new. I spoke to somebody that was out there, and they basically told me there's a lot of kids that can't play NAIA football. So it's not a very talented roster. This is he wants to make a splash. He knows that his best chance of getting to 4 or 5 wins this year is bringing in as many new players as possible because that was a bad team. I watched them last year. I don't think I've watched a worse football team in all of college football than Colorado. They were terrible. Florida State got one of the only kids that probably could play for him last year. So it's just he has his work cut out, but that's he's going to bring in his own guys. He said it. He said, we're coming. We're bringing our own guys. He's brought it up in every single meeting or whatever video that they've had. He's constantly said, listen, we're going to go get our own guys.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I can't wait to watch it. I just don't think it's going exactly as they thought it was going to go. I think he's lost some of his best players here over the last couple of days. So we'll see how that goes for him. But anyway, it's going to be fascinating to watch. But I'm not sure that thing is going exactly to plan, although I know he would have liked to bring in all 85 new guys if he could, but I'm not sure how realistic that is, at least not quality guys. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so the Aaron Rodgers deal is done, Fish. We've been waiting a month to find out where one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the world was going to go, and he is now a New York Jet. And, of course, we're still waiting on Lamar Jackson. But there is a draft on Thursday night. And right now, I think the only FSU guy going in the draft will be Jamie Robinson. Where do you think he will end up going? Do you think he's a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round guy?
Safeties don't usually go that high in the draft unless they're special. Derwin James, Jalen Ramsey, those type of guys. They don't go that high. I could see him sliding to like 5th, 6th round just because, that position doesn't go that high. He could go as high as 3rd round, but I see more mid-round, 4th, 5th, 6th round, 4th or 5th, 4th, 5th rounder with him.
Jerry, what about you? What do you think Jamie's chances of going in the third round or above before that are?
I agree with Fish with the safety. They don't usually go that high, right?
Yep.
So I would think not real high.
Yeah, especially particularly an undersized safety. He is a little bit small. He plays as one of the scouts told me this fall. He plays more like a linebacker with a linebacker's mentality at safety, but he's not as big as most of your safeties. But hey, it's an exciting weekend for Jamie and his family. He will be having a draft party up in Atlanta, I believe. And so congratulations to him, because he will be one of a long list of great Florida State players assigned in the NFL. And, of course, you will probably have guys like Poogie Wilson and Dylan Gibbons sign free agent contracts once the draft is over. And I hope that all those guys that want a chance get a chance to at least earn a spot in camp and get a chance to try to prove themselves. Guys, that's really about it. It'll be fun. Fish, do you watch the draft? Are you a draft guy?
I mean, I've been, when you go all the way back, I used to do a draft book and sell it down here in Florida, in South Florida, at a local magazine store. And I used to always get excited for draft day. I would take friends of mine, a Shoeless, they had a sports grill down here that they would have a draft day, and everybody would predict who went where, and then they'd give away prizes. So it's always been a big day for me. I love the NFL draft. I wouldn't be in this business if it wasn't for that. A friend of mine had originally told me, Fish, stop doing the NFL stuff, do high school kids to college. And that's how I got into this whole thing. So,
what about you, Jerry? You a draft guy?
I like it when FSU guys are, in the hunt.
So that means this year, no.
Yeah, this year not so much.
All
The thing is, you really like Jamie Robinson. I mean, that's a kid with a lot of enthusiasm, plays the game of football with passion, and if I'm a pro team, I'd take a hard look at him, for those reasons. But how high up will they move a kid because he's got a football IQ or a football mentality? I don't really know. What's your thought on that, Fish?
On what? I missed the question.
On how will a pro team take a kid a little earlier, a safety a little earlier, because he plays with heart and with intelligence?
No, I think all that matters in the NFL draft mainly is once you get past the first or second round, is upside. Is a guy have that potential to be a really good football player down the road, and they're willing to take a chance. That's why you see so many smaller school guys. How many times have you been watching the draft and you see a guy at Florida State, Miami, or Florida, and you're like, wait a second, why is that guy going in the draft? And there's some guy from a 1AA or D2 school going. It's because they look at those guys. A guy that would have been in that position is the kid that Florida State got from Shorter College this year. If he had stayed at Shorter, he would have probably been a guy that somebody took a chance on in the draft higher than he should have, just because, he's 6'6", he can run, and somebody's going, well, that guy's going to be more productive than this tight end that played at Colorado that is, played Power 5, but they'll sit there and go, well, this kid has more upside. Once you get past the second or third round, teams are trying to find those hidden gems, those guys that could come in. Now, some teams, they want this guys from the big time programs. They'll draft a guy from Michigan, or you'll see a Jerry Jones with the Cowboys. You'll see him take guys from schools that he either coached at when he was in college or he likes, like in Arkansas. Every one of these GMs is different, but a lot of guys, you'll see guys like Bill Belichick. He'll look for those guys like the guy Morlock from Shorter College that he can find. Every team's different, but it's mainly about upside once you get past the third or fourth round of the draft.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So there seems to be a pretty good consensus. A lot of times when I'm working, I'll have the NFL Network or Colin Cowherd going in the background just to kind of keep up to date on what's going on in football while I'm doing research. Bryce Young from Alabama seems to be the prohibitive favorite to be drafted number 1, but there seems to be a lot of discussion on who the second quarterback's going to be. Sounds like Will Levis's stock is going up, which you told me that 2 weeks ago. I would have been shocked. And it sounds like C.J. Stroud is going down. It sounds like Hendon Hooker's stock is going up, and Anthony Richardson's stock is going down. Who do you think is the next quarterback fish taken after Bryce Young?
Yeah, I think it will be C.J. Stroud at the end of the day, just because he's a guy that he doesn't have a lot of downside to him. He's a more polished and finished product than a lot of the guys. Anthony Richardson, it's going to come down to the one team that's like, you know what, this isn't a great quarterback draft. None of these guys are Andrew Luck. None of them are Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to take a flyer on him because he has so much upside. And if we hit, we're going to hit. And there's really no downside to drafting quarterbacks anymore in the first round. You get them for 4 years. You get them on a rookie deal. And you've seen what's happened with these teams. They have a quarterback 1 year, and the next year they're drafting a quarterback again in the first round because there's no downside to taking quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think C.J. Stroud will go second. I think Hendon Hooker may go before Levis or Richardson. I could be wrong, but
he could. I think if he didn't get hurt, he's probably a top 15 pick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the quarterbacks are going to make it interesting, along with a couple other guys. Like, where does the Carter kid from Georgia go? How far does he slip down? Are there any trades last minute? So I think it's going to be fun to watch the first round. I don't know how much excitement it'll be after the first round's over. Probably not a lot, but usually I watch the first round and then kind of stop by the television on Saturday and Sunday and watch the other, or Friday night, Saturday, Sunday afternoon. But all right, guys. Well, listen, we appreciate everyone joining us for Seminole Sidelines. If you are not a subscriber, please go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com. We've got a lot of free content, some recruiting stories that are in front of the paywall. We've got more exclusive recruiting coverage behind the paywall. We've got daily articles. Bob just wrote an article on the portal and Florida State's success in the portal, despite what's going on today. Florida State has hit a lot more home runs. Fish, I know that you have a message board post that attacks that same thing, where you talk about the positives for Florida State in the portal have far outweigh the negatives. So you can go to floridastate.rivals.com to check that out, or theosceola.com. Please check us out. We will be back in some form or fashion at 12:30 on the Osceola YouTube channel, the Osceola Twitter page, and the Osceola Facebook page for our Friday edition of Seminole Sidelines. So thanks for joining us. For Jerry Kutz, Bob Ferrante, and Charles Fishbein, I'm Pat Burnham. We appreciate you joining us, and we will be back on Friday.